Hmm.
Hello, everyone. Here we go. Hello. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending where you're tuning in from. Welcome. Let me see. So thank you so much for tuning in. Let me see. There was a few things I wanted to show you real quick, and then we can dive in. Okay, so this one. Okay. So I don't know if if any of you are fans of Legos. I I use Legos very much to de-stress. So I have a lot of sets. And yeah, it kind of helps me kind of just focus on one thing. It's definitely very calming for me. So I especially like when I can get Legos about things that I actually like very much, including plants. And so I have quite a few plant Legos. But I started running out of sets that I could do. So I started buying sets that were Lego like. So other brands. So I'm currently working on this one, and I wanted to recommend it because it was like $10, $12 on Amazon. And it looks like so this is what the artwork is, right? But it actually looks like this. And I started working on it actually yesterday. So it's not done. It's not done, but I mean it's pretty tiny. So I will show you the scale. It's pretty tiny. Um, it's a little bit a little more frustrating than my regular Legos, but I like the challenge. So it's coming along. It's coming along. So if anyone is interested, Amazon actually has some really cool type of like Lego plant options if you're looking for them. I have a bunch of actual Lego sets that I've done. I've done the Bird of Paradise. There's like a spring bouquet. I actually bought it for myself, the spring bouquet, and then someone else gifted it to me. And so what I did is I just combined them both, and so it looks like I have a giant bouquet of Lego flowers in a vase. Then I have the orchid. And then I have the succulent set that came out. I did that one last year, and that one's in our bedroom. So yeah, I was like, I'm running out of plant sets that I can do. So I'm hoping they release more plant sets. And then this is another one that I just got. So I think it's that one. So we'll see. I'll show you once they're done, but I wanted to just show you that real quick. Because this is currently my mind's buzzing. I was getting too tired last night, and I was like, all right, I'm gonna call it here, and I'll continue tomorrow night. It's like right before bed. It just kind of helps you zone out because you're just so focused on the pieces, and it's like you don't think of anything else. And I find that then I can fall asleep a lot easier. So I don't know if anyone here has any cool things like that they can do that kind of brings them some zen. Um, other than of course working with working with plants. Um, and then another thing I wanted to share with everyone is over the weekend I had graduated the Watershed Forestry um Institute for Teachers back in 2020. So we had a big reunion over the weekend, and we all met up in Prospect Park, and something was really cool happened was okay. So so firstly the reunion, and it's for everybody whoever graduated the program. So there are people who teachers who graduated back in like 2017 and everything. Oh my gosh, I'm seeing that you're also sharing. I'm seeing someone sharing the looks like, is that a puzzle? Hold on, let me add a spotlight. Oh, it's a puzzle, 2-in-1 double-sided puzzle. Okay, I need to get that. That is awesome.
Very challenging.
Oh, yeah, it looks that way. Oh, man. Oh, that's awesome. Thank you. I saw the picture going up in the corner. I was like, oh, yes. Yeah, I started that, the puzzle that I got, the houseplant puzzle, and it's very, very challenging. Oof. I was like, all right, I'm gonna pause it there because I just started getting frustrated. But oh man, I can't imagine that, especially because they're all like echivarias. It's like very, very similar. That's gonna be a challenge, definitely. Thank you for sharing. Um, but oh, so with the reunion, so we were all at Prospect Park to check out this exhibition called like Sounds of the Underground, something like that. I believe it's like sounds from the underground, or the Underground Sound Project. I'm gonna share the link with you because it's amazing. So I knew we were going to that exhibit, but when I got there on Saturday, and we were there all day. It was like from morning into early evening. Um, we we were all discussing, and then the artist came up to give a presentation about her exhibit before we walked over to the part of the park where she has her exhibit. And she looked so familiar, and the concept of the project she was talking about also sounded familiar. And I realized I was having a full circle moment because about 2 years ago, so I work with the city to take care of street trees. And I was one of the care captains, that we were doing a stewardship project in Hunters Point, which is here in Queens. And it's like 10-15 minutes away from us. And I was leading, like, there was a multiple captains kind of leading a big group to do some care for street trees, kind of clean them out, the pits, aerate the soil. And we had a really, really big group. There was like 30 people there. So I remember I was working with a group, and there was a woman who was there with a microphone, and she was sticking the microphone in the dirt as we were digging and weeding and planting bulbs and things like that. And I remember that she had her husband there, and that we all started talking about roots, root structure. And then I was like, oh yes, and how roots are amazing, and how the frequency that roots crackle is at 220 hertz. And that other roots can actually pick up on those vibrations. And there was this really cool study of seedlings in like a controlled environment, and they would put like a little speaker that was at that frequency, kind of mimicking the sound of roots crackling, and the seedling would grow towards that sound. And so that the theory, well, several theories, but one theory is that it's trying to grow towards the other roots crackling, because if there's roots there, that means there's resources, right? So it's kind of like, hey, what do you got? What can I I want to grow too. Another thing is that sometimes roots that are growing near each other are the same species, are a mother plant and her offspring, and often same species will actually root. Their roots might graft. This is very common with trees. And so the mother plant will actually, her roots will graft with her offspring. And then what happens is she basically transfers sugars over. She kind of helps the baby plant mature. But we were talking about this specifically, and they were like, oh, that they had come across that in the research as well. And we were basically just geeking out about roots. And I just remember it was such a lovely interaction, and that she was saying she was recording roots. She was recording like underground plant sounds, which I've never heard of, like somebody doing that as an art project, as she says she was going to do an art installation. So I had never heard from her again. Like I never, never communicated again. It was, she came to the event, nice interaction. And sure enough, I'm at my this reunion, this teacher's reunion. And yeah, she's now giving a presentation, and I'm like looking at her. I'm going, I think this is the lady I had a conversation with like 2 years ago. And sure enough, when we were on the trail, I was like, did you happen to come to an event like in Hunters Point? There was a big group, and you were with your husband, and we were talking about roots. And she was like, oh my God. And it was so funny. It was a completely unrelated organization, completely. And now I'm here at her exhibit. So it was so cool. Because I completely forgot her name. And I was just like, oh my gosh, I just know that she was doing a project on underground sounds. And so it was super, super cool that life kind of brought me back to her. So I thought that was super cool. And so basically the exhibit is, she's gone all around the world. So she did sounds all over. She recorded sounds in Alaska, in like South America. She's gone to different parts of the United States. But basically what she's doing is she's going and collecting these sounds of nature. So the sounds of streams, and the sounds of snow melting, the sounds of like ice crackling, sounds within trees, underground, so that you could hear what the roots, everything, what are they hearing basically. And she was just saying how she found it incredibly impactful when she was doing different sound recordings like in the East River, and she was hearing like she could hear the ferries and like the boats of barges passing by, and it was so loud in her headphones. And she thought, wow, like if I'm picking this up on my microphone, the wildlife that lives inside of the East River, they're hearing this in the water. And then after, she was also hearing something like a rumble, and she said it sounded almost like an earthquake, and then it would go, and then it would stop, and then it would go. And then she realized she was actually somewhere where there was a subway underneath. And so she was just saying, well, we should think about these impacts that the sound pollution, right? These animals, a lot of animals that depend on sound to communicate, to kind of be aware of their surroundings, to hunt. They're in the water, and there's this huge rumbling that's all human. It's all human made. So it was just amazing. But her exhibit specifically in Prospect Park is different sounds she's collected, some of which are in New York. And now, so there's two ways to experience the exhibit. There is a physical way. So if you are in New York City, you can walk over to Prospect Park, and there's stops. So you use a QR code. You could just use your phone to scan the QR code. It opens up the link, and then you kind of follow along the trail, and then you listen to different sounds that have been recorded either around that spot, or feature plants or different kind of things in the environment, like a stream that she might have recorded elsewhere, but is relevant there because there's a stream, there's a water feature, there's those species of trees there. And so it's super cool way to kind of connect in a different way to the park. But what's great too is you can take this little tour remotely as well. So it's all available online. So even if you're not in New York City, you can actually just listen and listen online. So I'm going to share the link with all of you because I think it was absolutely mind-blowing. And it was super, super cool. And I was like, I need to share this with everyone because it was such a cool experience. And so she was actually leading us. So she would tell us like, okay, I want everyone to listen to this recording. And we were like next to a pine. And so she goes, this is a recording from inside of a pine. It was super, 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 super cool. And I do want everyone, I do want everyone to listen to these sounds. So I'm gonna put the link here. It's, oh, there we go, the Underground Sound Project. And so you can do the tour remotely. And so I'll put that in there. Yes, Diana, yes, she was using a hydrophone, I think she called it. So when she was trying to kind of come up with the idea of the project, she said that she was trying to figure out what kind of microphone to use, and a sound tech. I did not know that there is such thing as an auditory ecologist. I have never heard of that specialty before. So I was like, that's super cool. I didn't know that was a thing. But an auditory ecologist, and so he actually told her that probably the best course of action would be to invest in a hydrophone. One is that you can put them underwater. You don't have to, they're very sensitive underwater, and it's something that easily she could just cover in plastic or anything like that for the soil. But it would still pick up these minute vibrations because it's calibrated to pick up sounds underwater. And that's what she ended up using, and it's quite amazing. I'll quickly do a screen share just so that I can just show everyone what this looks like. Here we go, the Underground Sound Project. I have dropped the link in the chat. And so if you're doing it remotely, so if you're tuning in, so here, if you're tuning in from Prospect Park, this is what you would see, and you would kind of follow the map to go around the park. But remotely, so here are those spaces, and then there's a message, a welcome message that she does, and then you can start to click, and let me see if it lets me. Here we go. I think it's this one. No, why is my mouse is not responsive today? It happened earlier too when I was sending out the email. Oh, there we go. So for instance, let's see. I'll put something here. Here, recording in the soil under wildflowers, just for you to get a little sneak peek. So that's the difference between the top side. So what you're hearing above ground and what you're hearing below ground. It's super, super cool. I highly, highly, highly recommend that you check it out. I think this is going to be a great teaching tool. I think it's a great perspective shift, right? To kind of think of just not only what sound does above the ground, because sound pollution is a thing, but also the impact that it has below the ground. That wasn't something that I would think about in terms of sound pollution, what that would do to the ecosystem, below the soil. I don't think that ever occurred to me. And so that was a cool perspective shift. And yeah, I think it's just a great learning tool to also kind of just show, kind of get, especially I think children, right? It's like this other way of experiencing the world. So I hope she continues. She's actually planning on getting more recordings and different places in the world. In Alaska, she was showing us pictures of theirs. So because of climate change due to the melting of the permafrost, she actually was showing what is called drunken forests. And so let me show you what a drunken forest is. And so these are drunken forests. And so there's permafrost. So this is snow that has been kind of solid for at least 2 years, but most of it is, of course, thousands of years old. And what's happening in the Arctic is that it's melting. And so these trees that had been growing upright, as the snow melts, that soil becomes displaced. Their roots kind of become displaced. They no longer have that anchor, and it's causing them to then kind of start bending down, and they're all growing kind of horizontally now. And this is happening in many places in the Arctic, and they're just snapping. It's really causing issues with like the canopy. There's really no more canopy in many areas because everything's kind of swooped down. And it's yeah. So these are called drunken forests for that reason. So it's very sad to see. And then what's happening is because of that soil displacement, these giant craters, like sinkholes kind of, are forming, in which things just start falling in. And so forests are literally falling into these giant craters. And so what she was doing is she was actually going into some of those craters and recording those sounds. Absolutely, like, amazing work that she's doing. So definitely check her out, Nikki Lunds. And so I think her information is here with the Underground Sound Project. And Lint, Nikki Lint. And she does do a little introduction at the beginning of the walk. She does introduce herself. Yeah, and definitely check out, follow her work if this is piquing your interest. So I just wanted to make sure to share that, because it was such a unique type of experience, and especially because it's around plants. I definitely wanted to share it with all of you, because that was really a really nice experience. And yeah, and then fun, of course, because it was such a full circle moment. I mean, I was there when she was, collecting some of that data that became part of this, and so that was super nice to see it finished and see something like this that I could actually attend. Yeah, it was really nice. So I saw some things here. Oh, Gabby says, oh, a year ago, you're saying that, Gabby, that's hilarious, because this morning when I opened up my feed for Instagram, somebody was posting about the Philadelphia Flower Show, and that they had gone, it's this artist who actually did these prints right behind me, Apsley. And they had put like a whole post about how they were at the show selling their prints and stuff, and I was like, damn, I missed the Philadelphia Flower Show, and you're talking about the Philadelphia Flower Show. But yeah, so Gabby is in the chat saying, a year ago I had mentioned that you had to go to the Philadelphia flower show. People come from all over the country. It's huge, and I totally missed it this year. And it was this past weekend. There are amazing environments created. You can walk through a rainforest. There's usually a whole orchid pavilion, different gardens, rare species, plant competitions, workshops. It's over the top. I'm so sad that I missed it. I had no idea it was happening. So I did not know. I mean, with the reunion, yeah, I I wouldn't have been able to go at least on Saturday, but we've gone to Pennsylvania conventions for other things before. So I think it's usually like a 3-4 hour drive to the place. So it's not too bad if we had to do it in one day. But man, I didn't know. Oh, Gabby says 2 2 hours for you. Oh, someone's asking if Prospect Park is in Pennsylvania. No, so Prospect Park is in Brooklyn in New York City. And so fun fact about Prospect Park, I think it was Olmsted. So he was one of the designers of the of Central Park in Manhattan, and he actually helped to design Prospect Park. Huge park in Brooklyn. Some of the oldest trees in New York City can be found in Prospect Park. Absolutely beautiful place. And yeah, and a lot of the areas are kind of less manicured, I want to say, than in Manhattan. So like, of course, like the north part of the park, like in the North Woods in Central Park, it does become very, very forested. The same with the Lock and like the Ramble. There's a lot of these forested areas that you get into, and the trees are so tall, so you kind of forget you're in the city. But I feel a lot of that more in Prospect Park. I feel there's more spaces like that where you can really kind of forget that you're in an urban area. So that it's really nice. I mean, I like both of them. Central Park is the closest to me. I'm less than 10 minutes away from Central Park. So that's definitely the park that I go to the most. But Prospect Park, I wish it was closer. It's like about 45 minutes, like 30 if there's no traffic. but yeah, about 45 minutes usual. So it's just a little too far to go continuously, but it's beautiful. So if you're ever visiting New York City, definitely check out Prospect Park if you have time. George, we have one at the Los Angeles Natural History Museum, but only one if I recall correctly. So I'm trying to see what you may be referring to. George, let me know what. Oh, the sound. Oh, that is so cool. That is cool. That is very, very cool. Yes, Diana, yes. She's amazing. She's a great artist. It was super, super cool to see, and she also was showing us drawings that she was doing, and she would do them with marker. And so she was trying to kind of draw the places that she was visiting. Absolutely amazing. Amazing. It was so cool to have the artist there, because you don't really get that usually, right? When you go to exhibits, you don't get the actual person physically there. But we had her physically there, so we could actually ask her questions, we can interact with her. And then on top of that, she did a whole presentation kind of introducing us to her work and what she was doing. And then we got to actually experience the exhibit. So for those of you who are in New York City or in New York, who are interested, maybe you're formal or informal teachers, you should definitely check out, it's called WIFIT. WFIT is the Watershed Forestry Institute of Teachers. And if you are kind of a nature-based teacher, and this can be anything, or even a teacher that is nature inclined, right? You can definitely apply to do their program. And so they do a program every year. and they do remote classes, class offerings, with a couple field trips to different parts of New York. So if you're in New York State, you should definitely check out that program. It was life-changing. It was so amazing. That program was wonderful. It was fully remote for when I went because of COVID. And I think that really helped me mentally, kind of going to class and stuff. At least even by Zoom. But yeah, that was whew, that helped. That helped. Oh, and Cheryl is saying it sounds like the novel The Overstory, which addresses conversations between trees. Yes, The Overstory is amazing. It's like a collection of short stories, an anthology, and really, really great. Check that out. I still remember quotes from The Overstory, and it was like, oh my gosh, and I think it was like how you would use an ash. It was cool. I never knew like ashes were typically used for baseball bats and things like that. There was some really fun, kind of fun facts in there. The Overstory is really, really good. If you want to continue kind of thinking about plant communication, I'm looking at my shelf here. The Hidden Life of Trees is great. What a Plant Knows is another amazing book. Yeah, What a Plant Knows. And let me see. Trying to think of another. There are some books by this author called Stephen Buhner. Absolutely amazing books. The author, he actually recently passed away, unfortunately, but I mean, his books are amazing, but he had some very problematic views. But I had read his books before I knew that, but so I feel kind of iffy when I recommend his books, but it's like his books are really good, but he wasn't very nice. But yeah, he has some really good books. But and more so about plant communication and like plant intelligence and things like that. But yeah, I have quite a couple books, I think, on that subject. I have to start kind of putting together different lists on specific subjects about plants. But yes, The Overstory is definitely an amazing book. George, do you mean Tree New York? Yes. I am a citizen pruner with Trees New York, and also with the Parks Department and the Natural Areas Conservancy. I'm a trail maintainer. I maintain a trail over in Forest Park in Queens, and I'm also a super steward. So there is a program here in New York City for stewardship, and so I've gone through their training. So I basically had gotten all the certifications they had at the time, and now in the last year they've released more. So I'm gonna go for those as well. But yeah, I became a care captain, and a super steward, and then a trail maintainer. So I've been doing, like, every time they say we have a new level that you can do, I'm like, yes. So yes, Trees New York, the Natural Areas Conservancy, New York Parks and Recreations. They offer so many programs, many of which are free. So if any of you are here in New York City, many of these programs are absolutely free. With Trees New York, it is $100 because you are getting a license to work, like a little permit to work with the city trees. So it does cost about $100. But it's an amazing course, and then you get to work with the trees. So it's a pretty good investment. So it's really great. Let me see. Oh yeah, so someone's mentioning with jigsaw puzzles, to complete them and frame them with floating frames from Michaels. That's a great. Yes, that is smart. I was trying to think of what I can do kind of after the puzzles are done, if I can glue them. Yeah. Oh, Synth says, I just updated my Apple laptop and I needed a de-stressor. I do 1,000 piece puzzles. That's great. Oh, Lego. I watch all of Lego Masters. So Cheryl's saying, I love Legos too. I watch all of Legos Masters, including the Australian version. And my daughter just sent me the Lego succulent set for Valentine's Day. Oh, that's great. Thanks so much. Oh, hello. Bohemian plant princess. Thanks everyone. I'm just trying to go through all the the chats. Oh, and Synth is saying next week on Wednesday, the Denver Botanical Garden is having its monthly free day. We're going. I'm excited. Fred, not so much. Well, enjoy it, Synth. I've been to Denver Botanical Garden actually. It was the end of September 2019. It was right before COVID, was happening. And we had gone for my cousin's wedding. It was our first time in Colorado, and I had to go to the botanical garden. And it was absolutely beautiful, beautiful garden. Oh, and so someone's commenting that there is a Prospect Park. So there's a park called Prospect Park in Philadelphia. Sorry, in Pennsylvania, outside of Philadelphia. I did not know that. I did not know that there was another park called Prospect Park. That's awesome. Oh, and Diane says, I'm a huge fan of Olmsted. I actually recently got a book, and it's about the history of Central Park. I can't remember the title offhand, but it's basically about the history of kind of the building, the creation of it. And I just got it. I'm excited to dig in, because I also have another book that I got a few months ago called Saving Central Park. I think that's the name. Yeah. Oh, thanks, George, for putting the link in there. The watershed. Yes, the WIFIT program. Yes. Thank you so much. Oh, Terry, the Prospect Park was her old stomping grounds. That's awesome. So check it out. Let me see here. Oh, Synth, the author's name, who was a little iffy. His name is Stephen Buhner. Stephen, so it's not that he was iffy about non-plant books, it's all about plants. But he got a little controversial about like diversity and things like that towards the end of his life. I understand he was older, but yeah, he caused a little bit of drama in the herbal world, in the herbalism world, towards the end of his life. And so but his books are amazing. Interesting. So George is saying that ashwood from Ireland is used for hurley, the stick in cricket. That is cool. See, like I love things like this. That is awesome. But yeah, like that's I love those kinds of like anthologies, different types of books like that end up kind of introducing you to a lot of things that folks, right, take for granted, and not knowing how certain species like impact the world around us. So I love getting those types of books. I have a lot of those, like The Incredible Journey of Plants. I definitely recommend that. It's like how plants around the world kind of started being circulated around the world, and why, and how they became like part of economies. So that one's really great. And then I have like a couple, I have two books, by one that's Around the World in 80 Flowers, around the world with 80 trees. But yeah, I love those like like those anthology type books where it's like a bunch of little excerpts. I think there's one too called Planting for the Future, that's also a selection of different herbalists picked one plant to talk about that is currently threatened or an endangered species. and they did like an essay about the plant, about working with the plant, about what we can do to potentially save the plant. And then they put these, just like 30 essays in this book. Really, really beautiful book. So yeah, gosh, I could literally do a whole class on just books, because I have quite a I have quite a collection. But yeah, I have to just sit down, and I feel like I need to just get an intern help me because yeah, I know I have well over 1,000 books. But I need to start making lists of these books, because they fall into so many categories, and so I know it would be very helpful for folks. So oh, thanks. And yeah, they're butterflies. There's like a sun, like some type of crystal, and then the moon, and then the butterfly. I ordered these from an artist, I think they're in Russia. And it took forever to come. It took like 3 months before they before they came. But yeah, I love these. I love these. Yeah, so I'll try to get these lists going. If any of you have any topics specifically that you're looking for, you can drop them in the chat, because I'll save the chat. Or you can always reach out and just say, do you have any books on like this subject? And then I can tell you a couple that I do have that fall under that, because yeah, I have so many. So I'll try to get that going for you. But let's talk about some propagation. I definitely want to show you a couple things here. So let me see. All right, let me move my stuff here. So a few, like 2 weeks back, I think I was showing you from my kitchen how we have a little bit of a setup in there, and we do have some propagations going. But I just kind of wanted to show you just the many ways that you can start your propagations. It's not always just in water, though. You can do that with a lot of species. And I also wanted to show you, because it was a great example of, it's really 50-50 whether the plant will take off or not. So I have a Peleonia pulchra, which is called watermelon vine, that I had gotten like last fall, that I have it in my bathroom. And I just noticed when I was watering it that it was, so it has like the main base part of the plant, and then it was growing like these 2 vines. But the vines seemed very kind of sad looking, and I felt like maybe they were kind of holding the plant back. Like I was like, maybe it's a little bit too much energy to kind of be pushing out towards that growth. So I cut those 2 vines. And already I've had them in water for about 2 weeks now. And the main plant looks so much different. It's upright, and it looks invigorated. So I think kind of cutting off those 2 vines definitely was helpful for the plant. Just wasn't looking right. And so I put each of those cuttings into water. So same plant, cut at the same time. And funny enough, over the weekend, I noticed that one is not doing well at all, and one is starting to actually put out growth. So I wanted to show you. So this is one of my propagation stations. So some of them have some leca in there. This is a spider plant. It's coming out with a new leaf in here. So this is a spider plant. I absolutely love these roots. Absolutely gorgeous. This is a Gisenia. Yeah, this is a Gisenia. But here is the pulchra. So I left it in here because I wanted to show you. So I'm gonna have to throw this one out. But look what happened. It is not happy. Let me pull it out because this isn't. Oh, wait a minute. Wait a minute. I thought it was completely dead, but it looks like this section is dead, right? But look at this section here. So this is still good. It's nice and thick and green. And it looks like it actually pushed out some growth here. And it looks like from here, from this node, so you see this node here, up is dead, but this looks like that's still growing. So I'm gonna cut that back. I'm gonna just clip it with my nail. And I'm gonna see if this is gonna keep going. I thought the whole thing was done, so I'm gonna cut a little bit more, kind of removing the entire node so there's nothing. Yeah, I'll remove more. There we go. But that is still growing. So let's see. Let's see. That was a surprise. I thought the whole thing was dead because it looked horrible. So I said, well, it's a 50-50 whether or not it's gonna look in same plant, but look, the cutting just completely just no, did not want to grow for me. Well, the rest at least. And then the other one here, so although the leaf looks like it's gonna go, it started putting out another leaf. So let me see if I can, here we go. There you go. It started, so you can see the stem is still nice and thick and healthy. It started putting out roots and it started giving me a whole leaf. So it had a little stub before, but it very quickly opened up as a leaf. Same plant, so you really don't know whether they're gonna work or not. This is a cebu. This is a cebu, and I have it on a glass stir. That's all I have it on here, just to kind of prop it up because it was getting really, really long. So I wanted it to stand upright. And this was a cutting that I just got. It's a Tradescantia. I think they're the teddy bear vine. And so I threw that in there. And so far so good. But yeah, I'm surprised with that one. I really thought it was just dead. So I was going to show you, well, there's a 50-50 shot because one did well, one didn't. But it looks like that base might still be alive. So I'll keep you posted on whether or not that actually worked. But yeah, you can keep them in water. As you see, I have some of them with just water. There's no added anything. There's no leca. I do like adding leca because it gives them something to adhere to. I feel like the roots grow bigger and stronger when they have something to grow with. The only issue with these that I usually have is they do get algae because they are right up against my bathroom window. So I end up having to clean these out. So I have to take the plant out, very carefully take the roots out, wash the roots, and then wash, I have the pipe cleaners that I have to use to clean the tubes so that they stay nice and clear, because you don't want algae buildup in your water propagations. So algae will steal nutrients and oxygen from your plant's roots. So it's not harmless. A little bit is not too bad, but if you start to see a lot of green, that's when it starts to become a problem. It will basically suffocate your propagation. So definitely keep an eye on that. You don't want to kind of dilly-dally. Oh, someone's asking if I use soap. Yeah. So I'll put a little bit of dish soap. I'll put like a drop of dish soap if I have to. Usually it's just enough with water. It's perfectly fine. But if it's like a buildup and I really, really want to clean them out, I will take out the leca, give it a good rinse. And then when it's just the glass by itself, I'll do like a drop of dish soap and then really, really scrub well and rinse it out really, really well so that it's not kind of, doesn't have any more of that soap residue. I'm not using that much, but still I don't want to kind of have that in contact with the roots. I don't want to cause any breakdown of any of the like protective coatings. So the roots have protective coatings. Many roots, when they are living in soil, they secrete something called mucilage, and it's a polysaccharide. So it's a complex sugar that it kind of releases around its roots, and it's kind of like a jelly. And so basically it protects the roots from taking in too much water. I mean, it's not foolproof, of course, but it offers like a little bit. So it's a lipid, kind of like almost like a lipid layer. So it kind of helps keep too much water out, keeps the roots hydrated, and also when they're going through soil, kind of makes them a little bit more slippery, so they can kind of beat the friction of coming across different things in the soil. So some plants produce much more mucilage than others, but it is like a protective coating. Of course, it's not foolproof. We know that plants can very well start to rot from not being able to keep a lot of water out of their roots, because they start to rot that way. But yeah, it's cool to know they do have a mechanism where they at least try to protect themselves. But yeah, so with these water propagations, make sure whenever you do put your plants in there, they can't have any soil on them. You have to make sure they are as clean as they can be before you put them into water, because if you do add them into water and they have any soil particulates on them, that's surface area for fungus and bacteria to grow. And then that will end up, harming your plant in the long run. It'll cause it to rot. So checking for algae, I do recommend throwing a little bit of leca in there, and maybe not at the start, but once your roots really start growing, throw a little bit of leca in there, because they will start to adhere to it, and once they have something to kind of grab onto, you'll notice the actual roots will start putting out thicker roots. And so I really like to do that because it helps so much when I when I transfer them over. But I don't always have them in that kind of mix. I do sometimes have some plants in mixes like pon. So this is pon. Here we go. So this is a Burl Marx Fantasy. It was a stick, and it's actually just starting to give me a leaf. And so this has been just kind of going. I had this one, it had 2 leaves when I got it. And during the whole thrip outbreak during the late summer, it lost those leaves. So I've continued to take care of it, even though it was a stick. But it looks like it's finally starting to give me a leaf. So we'll see. I mean, there's plenty of nodes. So these are nodes. So these little segments here. These little nodes. And so I didn't want to chop it up necessarily. I might wait if it starts to put out leaves and it looks really good. Maybe then I'll start to chop it up. But I didn't want to necessarily cut it up into little pieces since it was just a stick at that time. I was like, I'll wait because I still had roots. So I was like, let me be patient. So far it's paying off. But you can use pon. So pon is P-O-N. And I also use LECA. I'm just dropping it into the chat, which is LECA. It's an acronym for lightweight expandable clay aggregate. LECA. And I have a few of my propagations in sphagnum moss. So with pon, similar to LECA, you can have your plants in water 24/7. You can also let it dry and then water your plants. So I have it where I do leave a little bit of residual water at the base, but I don't fill up that pond specifically. With a lot of my LECA, I do have them in kind of submerged full-time in water. But another way that you can kind of have your propagations is in sphagnum moss. So this one's dry, so I wanted to show you what that looks like when it's dry. So it's very light when it's dry. Once it's, I put it into a little cup and let it completely soak through. And that's the only thing that's in here is just sphagnum moss. So this is a Dichidia. Absolutely love this plant. And it's just been happily growing in my kitchen, hanging off of a cabinet. And all I have to do is I see that it's dry, I water it, and then I forget about it again. So it's been super easy to take care of. But I absolutely love those leaves. But yeah, you can keep your plants in sphagnum. Now, the issue with sphagnum is it's great if you already have it and you can just work with what you have. But the problem is if you have to go out and buy it. So sphagnum is not a renewable resource. As much as folks might say, oh, well, we have our own grow area and things like that. But it's very valuable to the environments from which it's being removed. So it's being taken out of these peat bogs and these environments that are pretty crucial to even the filtration of water in those areas, to a lot of local animals and microorganisms. And those areas it takes thousands of years for that to build up. And people are just going and excavating it and then selling it for houseplant enthusiasts. So it's great if you already have it on hand. I don't recommend you actively go and buy some. So I happen to already have a big bag when I found out about this. And so I've been just using basically what I have. And once it rots away and no longer have it, then that's it. I don't really want to participate in buying more of it. But if you do have it, it does work really well with epiphytic species. So species that grow on trees that typically have their roots exposed, so they can kind of go through these kind of dry out and periods, and then these kind of full soaking, and then kind of leave them alone. So the issue you can come across with sphagnum is if you pack too much too tightly, and it might be hard for the water to actually get to the roots effectively if you're not fully saturating it. Also, if you are putting too much, it might not have enough air circulation and it'll take longer to dry. And this can end up causing your plant to rot. So you want to make sure it's nice and fluffy and airy and not like packed in either. Yeah, and it gets really light when it's dry and it'll be dark as soon as you water it. So it's something to consider especially if you have like epiphytic species, things like Hoyas, a lot of like my philodendrons and monstera cuttings and things like that. Many of them, we had them in sphagnum, and then we transferred them over. So it is a cool substrate to start your propagations. I've had this guy like this since I've got him, and it's been, I guess, 2 years now. And it's going strong. So I don't think I'll remove it until like the roots are maybe escaping or something like that. But so far it's happy this way. But yeah, sphagnum is another potential option. And then you can actually just put your plants directly into soil. So last week I showed you some Hoyas that I had ordered. And so a few of them I actually put in pon. So I have them in pon. So I put a bunch of them in here, and this guy started pushing out more growth. So it's just a really long vine here right now. So this one's in pon. But you can put them directly in soil. So there is this guy had a little bit of a root. So I just said, well, I'm just going to put him directly into a into a mix. And so this is a Crimson Queen. So if you've ever heard of the Hoyas, the Crimson Queen or the Crimson Princess, the Crimson Queen has a crown. So she has this white edge and the whole middle part is green. The Crimson Princess has a gown. So the queen wears her crown and the princess has her gown. So when you look at a princess, the Crimson Princess, it's the opposite. So you're going to see a green edge and a white center. So if you're ever trying to figure out what crimson royalty do I have, a queen or a princess? So this one's a queen. So she has that white edge because she has that crown. And the mix that I put it into is a mix of leca, perlite, orchid bark, cocoa coir, a little bit of succulent soil, and some worm castings. So a very airy, breathable mix. I don't want this to sit like in mud. So I want it to be a lot of pockets of air, kind of a lot of rocks basically inside of it. And with some nutrition, with the worm castings, and some bark as well. So it holds a little bit of moisture, but not too much. And so far so good. It hasn't started dehydrating or anything. So far so good. So I'm gonna keep it in here. And yeah, you can definitely put your propagations right in soil. If you'd like to go that route, it really is a 50-50% game. Because even if you put them in water, you put them in any substrate, like I wanted to show, you can take 2 cuttings from the same plant and propagate them the exact same way, and you might lose one. It really is a game of chance. So I really wanted to show you that. And in terms of upkeep with things like pond, you can rinse it out if you do get any algae or anything like that. You can totally rinse the whole thing out, and then kind of you can rinse it out while it's in the container. I wouldn't add soap or anything like that if you're keeping the plant in there during that process, and it's very porous. So I don't know about adding like a bunch of soap to clean it, but if you wanted to kind of give it a good rinse, you can do so. And with the sphagnum, really the upkeep is just kind of checking, seeing that you don't have any like rotten pieces. If you do, you can remove it. You don't want to make sure there's no mold or anything growing on it. Thankfully, I haven't had an issue with mold on sphagnum. The only time I've ever seen mold on sphagnum has been in like propagation boxes before I add some springtails. So that's when I first started playing with propagation boxes. I saw some mold build up, and then I thought, oh gosh, I need to put springtails in here to eat the mold. And then they did. And then so now the propagation boxes are fine. But yeah, that's the only time I've really seen anything on my sphagnum. So sphagnum stays pretty pest resistant. I really don't see much in there. Now, if you keep it wet all the time, that's not good for your plant, but also it would potentially attract fungus gnats. So do be aware of that. But yeah, so there's just there's a couple different ways that you can propagate your plants. I like to also keep these on hand because I have a lot of propagations. So a lot of the plants that I get as cuttings. I really like kind of starting them off like that. So and I also like propagating my own plants. And so I have quite a few of these. I have one of these in each room of the house. And so I have the water. But these are just great because they just can fit so many different situations. So they're just great for the tubes, for even pots. These work really great if you have very small like succulent pots and you kind of want to give them a quick little rinse around like on top, and before you give them a good bottom watering. This is great if you want to just saturate. Maybe you're just propagating a succulent, has very shallow roots, so you don't want to oversaturate the soil. having one of these. It's better than a mister. So I'm just recommending this above a mister because the mister is going to wet the leaves as well. And if you don't have proper circulation in your house, it's just going to end up rotting out your leaves. And so instead of using a mister for these little propagations you're doing, this is much more localized. You can specifically point it where you want it to go. Yes, this is called a squeeze bottle. So a squeeze bottle, let me see if I can pull one up on Amazon. But yes, it's just a squeeze bottle. Squeeze. Let's see. Let me see about Amazon. They call them lab wash bottles. Here we go. Squeeze bottle, medical. They have it as safety wash bottles, squeeze bottles, no spill wash bottles. So they have them in different with different names, but they're very cheap. So I have like 4 or 5 around the house. And on Amazon they have 2 of the larger ones for like under $7, $6.79. So it's pretty cost effective. But it's just a great tool to have. So especially even with these little guys behind me, it's super easy, super easy. So I do have these everywhere. And I highly recommend that. And so yeah, there's a couple. Which one do I have? I think this is the 500. So this is the 500 milliliter one. I do have some 250 milliliter ones, but I have 3 of these big ones, and then the others are tiny, are the 250. So this is the 500 milliliter. But yeah, so highly recommend this. And yeah, it's usually used for like cleaning lab equipment and things like that for water, eye irrigation and things like that. So it's usually like a medical laboratory supply. And it's great. It's great to use for plants. But yeah, I see there's some questions, so I definitely want to address those. So let's see. Jamie Murphy, I have heard not to add fertilizer to a totally dry plant. This is true. Do I water then water with fertilizer? Wouldn't the second water with fertilizer just run through? Great question. Yes, so you do not want to add fertilizer to a plant that is bone dry. And the reason for that is because a lot of commercial fertilizers, so the fertilizers you buy that are kind of pre-prepared, like a liquid that you might dilute further, or it's like a powder that you mix in with water to then water your plants. A lot of these are very salt heavy. And so what ends up happening is that they end up kind of leaching water away from your roots. And so what can end up happening, you can burn your roots. You can end up killing your roots, basically. Because as soon as they come into contact with these dry roots that have no water kind of inside, they're not hydrated, it will just kind of further leach away moisture from them and cause burning and just, destroy the tissue. So just definitely don't do that. In terms of, so how do I moisten it before I fertilize it? Yes, you can do that, especially if the plant's bone dry. I would say to water it about 50% as to what you usually do, so that you can at least get some moisture to the roots, but not completely saturate it. And then at least 24 hours later, at least you want to give it 24 hours to kind of soak all that up. Then you can go in and give the other half of what you would have watered it. But now the soil is a little bit more saturated. There's more capillary action going on if the plant is a little bit more saturated. So it's gonna kind of more willingly kind of take up that extra moisture. If it is bone dry, and even when you do water it initially, it might go right through. And this is usually because your soil has become so dry that it becomes hydrophobic. So you need those capillaries formed again. So this might entail taking something like a barbecue skewer or a chopstick, something like that you might have on hand, to kind of make holes in the soil to kind of open up these little areas to kind of invite water to come in again. If you have a nursery pot, the squeeze method works really well, where you kind of crunch the soil up so it breaks apart, because when it's solid like that, it's kind of like cement. So the water just rolls right off and goes down the sides and out through the drainage holes. So it ends up not actually going into the plant. So you want to break up that mix. It's so if you have a nursery pot, it's really easy because you can squeeze it. But if it is a ceramic pot or a terracotta, you can't squeeze it. So you might have to then use like something like a barbecue skewer or a chopstick, or if you have even like a plastic fork. Just be careful with the force. You don't want to be stabbing the soil. It's kind of like a very precise, you can kind of go along the edge or very carefully throughout the soil, but just kind of feel and just make sure you're not ripping up plant roots. So you don't want to be stabbing through plant roots. It's kind of like going push. If you feel a little bit of resistance, maybe kind of try to see if there's a root there so you don't damage it. But yeah, making some of those, and then a bottom watering also is very helpful, because it'll just also can be completely immersed after you do that, after you break up the soil mix. So that might be helpful. But yeah, so you'd want to water about 50% of what you would usually, and then the other 50% would be that fertilizer with water. Just make sure that you dilute that fertilizer. And I always say, if it tells you, let's say, to dilute 4 times, dilute 6 times. So just go as gentle as you can. I personally had really bad experiences with fertilizers. The only fertilizer I think that I still use, well, 2 that I still use are and I have an orchid fertilizer. It's like a yellow neon green powder. I'm forgetting the name of the brand that I still use, and my bromeliad fertilizer for my tillandsias, for my air plants. But other than that, I've tried so many different types of fertilizers that I just did not like. So I continue to work with fish water. So that's my aquariums. They're fish. The water that I clean out from my aquariums, and worm castings. I like to use worm castings as well. So they're just really gentle. I don't have to worry about burning. I don't have to worry, about that. The only thing with worm castings is if you add too much, it does hold a lot of moisture. So you don't want to add too much. It's literally like a sprinkle, like a pinch, so it's not, you're not putting like tons in there. So yeah. Yeah. So I hope that's helpful. Let me see here. So Holly, will you look at my plant that has, what are these tentacles? Yes. Give me 1 second. Here we go. Oh, this looks like a sago palm. Oh, hold on. I'm trying to unmute you. Oh, I think you have to, I'm not getting any audio.
Hello.
There you are. Oh my goodness. Yes, that looks like a sago palm. These tentacles, what on earth? That is so weird. And that's coming. I'm wondering if it's
Came out the middle. It's another one growing too. It's one in the middle here.
Huh. So I am not aware of them having any types of these types of root systems where they have like aerial roots. So I'm thinking maybe you might have a hitchhiker. So a plant that kind of fell in the little areas in the spaces that is growing. That is
What?
so weird because that actually I don't know if I think I posted that in the Facebook, but there was recently a funny discovery where there was like I think it was like a palm tree or something, and people were freaking out because there was an orchid bloom coming out of the palm tree, and people were really confused because they're like, what is this? Like, this has never been seen before. And it turned out that it was just that an orchid had gotten caught in the little spaces of the palm and was just happily growing there, and nobody knew about it until it bloomed. But I've never seen that on a sago. Let me see if sago palm, maybe adventitious roots.
It's an alien.
Roots. I have never seen that. Sago palm. I'm looking for adventitious roots.
It's got these little, can you see the, I'll put it up close.
Yeah, like these little, it kind of looks like they have little hairs or something.
They're little knobbles that curl up just like the top all along here, nodules with little curly.
I wonder if they put out runners. So let me see. You hear Julia? She's just going off. Let me see here.
They grew out and then they died. One of them
Runner.
is still green. I mean, they're brown, but they didn't fall off.
Yeah, I'm seeing that they do produce babies at the root, so you can do root divisions. I don't see anything about runners. I don't see anything about adventitious roots that they might grow. I'm just gonna try aerial roots as the last resort, but I think you might have somebody hijacking your sago. So there might be something that was caught in the sago and started growing, but isn't actually part of that plant. So you might have like a hitchhiker. No, I don't see anything. So I think you have a hitchhiker. But as to the identity of the of the hitchhiker, I'm not too sure. I mean, definitely.
Can you see in the middle here? See that little green?
Yes.
That must be the hitchhiker. I don't know if you could tell. It's just a curly thing. It's got little fuzzy stuff on it.
It almost looks kind of fern-like, but I don't, because you're saying they're like curled.
Yeah.
I mean, if you
don't look like a fern through this magnifying glass.
If you could take some close-up photos and send them to me, I'm happy to try to help solve this mystery. But I've never seen this before. That's so odd.
Yeah. I thought you would know. I said, oh, this must be normal.
No, definitely not normal. Definitely not normal. And I don't think they put out their fronds that way. Most palm.
That's what I was thinking, that they were going to turn into, it was going to get more fronds, but.
Yeah, because they're usually much more, they kind of put them out kind of like, kind of like the fronds are kind of like encapsulated. It kind of comes out like a really long straw, but then the leaves open up.
Yeah.
So as far as I know, they don't kind of put it out and then have like, one leaf kind of pop out at a time. And it's not like as sturdy. It's kind of more like you said, tentacles.
Yeah.
That's so cool though. Please, if you can send me close-up photos, I can try to see if I can figure that out for you, because that's a weird one.
Hey, I get thumbs up. I
Yes.
want to find out too. I just found out I have mold in my house, and my prayer plant was sitting over there, and all the leaves kept turning brown, but I don't see any mold on the plant. Is if you have black mold in your apartment, will it do something to your plants?
I mean, it can if the plants are a little bit more sensitive, then it can happen. It can show that way. Because the plants are also susceptible to mold and in their soil and things like that. So I mean, you would potentially see that happening like in your soil and on your plant. Yeah, so that might be in terms of help. I mean, is it still alive or?
I can show you, but like only two plants that in here that are affected is my fake lucky bamboo keeps having yellow tips. And I stopped watering it a lot, and it's sitting over here. The mold is over there. But
Okay.
my prayer plant was over there. I'll get the prayer plant, but you can keep talking to somebody
yeah.
till I get there.
No worries. Yeah. Let me see. Oh, Teresa had asked, would that be the same with orchids? So I think you meant in terms of water propagation, Teresa. Well, with orchids, it really depends on the species. With like vanilla orchids, you can cut them and put them into water to start to propagate. But with ones like Phalaenopsis, like the moth orchid, they do much better in something like leca or orchid bark. Sphagnum moss might be a little bit too much moisture for them. So I wouldn't recommend that with a Phalaenopsis, like the moth orchids. Oh, here's your prayer plant.
Yeah, usually when it's overwatered, just the tips turn brown. But I had a whole bunch of leaves that just did this. And also there's roots coming out the bottom, so it's probably time to repot it. But it was doing so great and growing. This has grown a lot since I got it. But then I've never seen the leaves just turn brown like that. And the only thing I could say is that I found mold over there. Ouch. And I don't know.
I mean, from the look of the leaves, it looks like they're crispy. Are they crispy?
Yeah, crispy.
But so I don't think that I'm not sure. I've never heard of like the mold causing that kind of damage. Usually kind of fungal things that affect plants will does indeed brown the leaves, but it makes them really like mushy. It makes really like they start to rot basically. So this might be an issue
They
with
don't crumble when you do this, but they're they're just
yeah. So that looks more like some type of dehydration. It could be something with the humidity recently. Maybe it was very dry in your home, or maybe there was some extra warmth in your home. Maybe the heater might have gone up. It could be
no.
that the plant's just getting if you do have roots escaping the bottom, it could mean that it's a little root bound, and then maybe it's not successfully taking up water to maintain all of the leaves, and so some of those leaves just weren't able to get adequate hydration.
Yeah,
could be it.
I think it can't. If I'm growing mold on the wall,
Yeah.
it has to be enough moisture in here. So it's probably from the roots, like you said.
Yeah.
It's probably time to replant it. I was so scared, I put it in the bathroom away from the rest of the plants in case it had something on it. But all the rest of the leaves are really looking good. So I don't see any spots on any leaves, but I'm gonna wipe them off anyway, just to make sure. And
Yeah.
other than that, my alien plant.
Alien Sago. I've never ever seen that before. So I'm definitely gonna try to find what that is. I've never seen that. I really do think it's a hitchhiker though, because I've never seen that type of growth coming out of a sago. So
Yeah, but why would it just grow tentacles and die? What kind of plant grows tentacles and just turns to brown?
what I think is probably that you have a hitchhiker that started to grow, and then it couldn't get enough light because of the sago's palm, leaves. So it kind of just kept kind of pushing out growth and getting really radiolated, so getting stretched. And then it just maybe couldn't get enough nutrients because it's kind of in these little sections, nooks and crannies. It's not in an actual soil mixture. So it just probably
Should
can't
I cut
sustain
these off?
If you wanted to, definitely take pictures before you do, because I really want to kind of see what they look like, to see if I can help you at least figure out what it is. But yeah, I think it could just be a hitchhiker.
Okay, I gotta be careful for hitchhikers. I take my magnifying glass to the
Yeah, I mean, sometimes not all hitchhikers are bad. I love getting plants, and then there's like another plant that fell in there and started growing, and I'm like, yes. I have that with my Ceropigia. There's a Kalanchoe fell in there and rooted and is been growing, and so it's happily living in there with my string of arrows, and so I'm like, there you go. It's happy, so I'm just gonna leave it there. So it's
Thank you.
good.
Yeah.
You're very welcome. Oh, I definitely like those mysteries. So I'm gonna try to see what in the world that is. Question here. I'm noticing all my clay pots with jades, Christmas cacti, and African violets have a white dusty film on top of the pots since being placed and growing very nicely in my west window. What does it mean and what do I do? Okay, so it sounds like you might have patina. And so this is sometimes happens with kind of like a salt buildup in your mix. And it appears on clay pots. It gives them this kind of white, kind of spotty kind of look. Looks like it's kind of like growing on your terracotta. So that's one potential thing. It could be, and this is usually if you have very hard water. So if your water has a very high mineral content, and that could be cleaned off. You can actually take just a little bit of like a damp paper towel with some vinegar, and that tends to at least do the trick to kind of remove it. When it's kind of new, you can do that. But I mean, patina is the first thing I'm thinking of. If it's on the top of the pots. So if it's in the soil, I mean, I would try to see if it is a buildup of salts, basically. If it's fuzzy, then that might be mold. But if it's kind of like a crust, I think that's the best word to use, crust. If it's like a crust, it could be just that salt buildup. And to get rid of that, you can rinse the plants out. But of course, again, if you have hard water, I mean, letting them kind of run through is helpful, but you might want to switch to using either filtered water or kind of like a spring water or things like that. If yeah, some plants don't mind very much if you have harder water. Some are a little bit more sensitive to it, but I'm assuming if it's crusty, like and it might be patina. In a white dusty film. Yeah, it's like a crust kind of like on top. So it might be patina. Let me see. Brenda, I feel like a propagator failure. Aw, for pothos. I plant everyone I can propagate. I have a stem cutting with 2 nodes. It's been in water for over 2 months and no roots. The leaves are still alive. The stem is not mushy, but no roots. Help. What should I do? All right, Brenda. Well, it's a good sign that it's still happy and alive. That's definitely a good sign. It's not rotting. So that means it had enough energy inside of its stem to keep those leaves alive, to keep itself looking nice and vibrant, without starting to desiccate. Because when they can't actively pull up water, they start to kind of shrivel up. So if it's still looking good, for 2 months, that is interesting. Usually pothos will root fairly quickly, within just a few weeks. So what can you do? So one might be to aerate that water. So an option would be to either do a couple more water changes more often. Another is if it's a bigger container where you're able to actually aerate it, there are what they're called bubble, oh my gosh, air bubbles. They're usually for fish tanks. And air, I think they're called bubble wands. There we go, bubble wands. And they come in all different shapes and sizes. There's some that are just like little thin tubes. There's some that are like a little ball, some that look like little discs. And so basically adding more more oxygen to the water will be very helpful to stimulate root growth and also to keep your roots happy. So I guess if you wanted to kind of fast track, that might be helpful, is adding a little bit more air to your pot or whatever it is, vase or thing that you might be using, is adding a little bit more oxygen. I wouldn't want you to cut it again, or anything like that to stimulate the growth. I would say just add a little bit of oxygen in there, or maybe a few more routine, like maybe change the water a little bit more often. It should be giving you roots anytime now. It should. So if it's looking really healthy, I don't want you to kind of mess with the plant itself. That's so interesting though, because they do usually start to root fairly quickly. Maybe it could be if you kind of put it a little closer to a light source, not very much different. You don't want to go, if you have it like in a very indirect spot, you don't want to go immediately to direct light, but maybe a little bit more light. It might get more energy and then start to kind of push that out too. But oof, so it's not mushy, but there's just no roots. Those are the only things I can think of, because usually what folks would then say is, yeah, just cut back to the next root so that you stimulate it, but then it's an open wound, and I feel like you're now kind of restarting the entire process. And now with that open wound, you lose another node, right, in the process of cutting them. And then it might end up, not doing very well. So since it's not mushy or anything, I think maybe adding a little oxygen and a little, so waiting a little bit longer and maybe a little bit more light, that might help. Synth is asking, in what would you propagate a panda plant leaf? So I have different, that's a Kalanchoe. I propagate them in like a leca. So I have in my room, I have these little, they were meant for candles, and it's like a little square. And then I fill it up with leca. And then I put my succulent cuttings on top, and then I fill it up with water right below where the top of the leca is. So it like evaporates, and then the little succulents actually put their roots through. I have them growing like that. And so it keeps the leaves from coming in direct contact with water so they don't rot. But then, yeah, they do really well like that. And because it's like a panda plants are very fuzzy, that would probably be the best approach. Yeah. I hope that's helpful. um Oh, Sue, after watching last week, I was able to find a Kalanchoe dragonfire plant in Walmart for $5. How do I take care of it? There's no info on it. It's just so pretty now, but I don't have any plant lights, just a west window. Yes, so with Kalanchoes, yes. So west window, it should be fine for a Kalanchoe. The only thing is if you do get that strong light in the evening, just kind of watch to see if it might be really strong. It really depends on your location. So for instance, we have western windows. We have 3 western windows. But we have a courtyard, our apartment, there's like a middle courtyard. And so that obstruction, so technically when we look out the window, we see a wall. And so that helps obstruct that kind of direct western light. And so we kind of just get it from above. And so that's very protective, right? So if it kind of see what's your light situation? Are you getting straight on light? Is there like an obstacle? If there's an obstacle, it's kind of helpful because it does lessen the strength of that light. But I mean, I do have a couple of my Kalanchoes right in the western window, right up against it, and they're fine. In terms of care, they definitely like to dry out between watering. So I do have quite a few species of Kalanchoes, and letting them dry out. So if they're tiny, so if they're like really tiny plants, like in 2-inch pots, you might have to water those, depending on how quickly they're drying out in your home. It might be about every 10 days or so. A lot of my Kalanchoes I water once every 2 weeks. Yeah, like for the 4-inch and up, those I definitely water like every 2 to 3 weeks. So if they're really tiny, they'll need a little bit more moisture because they dry out faster. But the bigger ones, you can really lessen that. I wouldn't fertilize it. They don't really need fertilizer. Maybe in the summer months if you wanted to add a little bit of worm castings, but they really don't want to be fertilized like that. So like drying out, they like bright light. If not, they start to stretch. So they start to ideolate. That's what I've seen with a lot of my Kalanchoes is if they're not in a really nice spot, they stretch very quickly. In terms of keeping like that red tint, keeping it in that bright light situation is going to be very helpful. If you don't have grow lights, so that'll definitely help. Definitely the western light should do the trick for keeping that red on the leaves. If you have the dragonfire, and if you do end up getting grow lights, they'll keep their color like that. So yeah, I think I have do I have a pink plant back here? Oh. I have a couple Kalanchoes like just behind me, but like this is a panda plant. So it keeps those like black edges on there. And then this is also another Kalanchoe. The oak leaf Kalanchoe. I love the shape of these leaves. They're so cute. But this is the oak leaf Kalanchoe. So yeah, they definitely do thrive with the grow light. So if you're able to get your hands on one, it ends up being really helpful in the long run. But yeah, a western window should be good to go. And yeah, make sure you're not watering a lot because they will rot. So little ones, maybe about every 7 to 10 if they're drying really quickly, but 10 days is like a sweet spot for little ones, little like 2-inch pots. And then 4-inch and up, you can stretch that out to like every 2 weeks or so. That tends to work with them because it's like they want water, and I bottom water them. So I get them really nice and saturated, and then I forget about them like that. Just let them dry out. And I just keep a calendar when I watered a section. And then I know I keep plants that are similar in that section. And that's how we separate them around the house. So we put plants that have the same watering needs together, so that I know, okay, these guys are all like, in a week I need to water them, or in 2 weeks, 3 weeks. It's much easier for for us mentally than trying to think, oh, this guy has to get watered once a week, but this guy is like once a month. It's easier when we group them together that way. George, it's a cycad. Yes, the sago palm, yes, is a cycad. And cycad has 3 types of roots and 2 types of leaves. Cycad has coralloid roots, which are nitrogen fixing, but it's not the case. Yeah, with the coralloid roots, so those look like little nodules that grow at the base of the cycad. So they can kind of grow upright towards like the main section of like the trunk, right, of the cycad, and there's these little nodules. They almost look like a bunch of thumbs kind of put together, and basically, yes, they're nitrogen fixing, so these little nodules kind of house bacteria that creates that kind of fixes nitrogen. It kind of makes nitrogen much more bioavailable. And so it's also believed that they also help aid kind of with like the oxygen, the amount of oxygen that the plant is also getting, because they're above ground. There are plants like plants in the Fabaceae family, in the pea legume family, that have nitrogen fixing roots as well, and they have those nodules. That's why it's really good for like farmers that they cycle their plots, and in some plots they put like clover for a season, and then they're growing on the other plot, and then they kind of go back and forth between seasons, or like every 2 seasons, and the clover will end up kind of getting all that nitrogen and kind of replenishing all of those nutrients into the soil. So clover can be good. I know a lot of people hate clover, but it can be really good. Yes, and George is pointing out that about saltburn and water quality, and that you can pull a report from your water district. Yes, absolutely. And so yeah, definitely. You can do that. You can pull your local water. It'll tell you what the average pH is, the hardness of your water. So if you have soft or hard water, kind of tells you that mineral content. Also tells you the amounts of certain chemicals that you might have. So the amount of chlorine, I think it's chloramine as well, like the cousins, the chemical cousins of chlorine. So chloramide, I think there's chloramide, chloramine, there's like a different ones. And so, yeah, you can pull up your reports and kind of see. I mean, it's helpful for you to know too what kind of water you're ingesting, but it's very helpful with your plants. So definitely check that out. Yeah, and so that, so Adeline, could you give us a plan on upcoming weekly times? I'm not sure what that is referring to. If you could clarify. If it's in regards to the class, it's at the same time every week. So those aren't switching. And you're very welcome. Oh, Holly is asking, how many plants are in the pothos or philodendron species? A lot. A lot. Gosh. I think there's over 100 species of philodendron. And in terms of epiprenums, I think there's also maybe at least 100 or over 100. There's a lot. And in terms of circulation, like in houseplant circulation, right now, gosh, I think there's maybe like 20 varieties of pothos that are like in active circulation that people can collect, like pearls and jade, and a lot of them are actually Epiprenum aureum, which is the golden pothos, and it's just variations of that same plant. So they're just so I should correct myself. It's not species of 20 species, but rather kind of variations. In terms of species, there's probably maybe like about 10 species of epiprenums that are kind of readily available for people to buy. And then with all the variations of even just Epiprenum aureum, there's so many, like the pearls and jade, the enjoy, the Gisenia, the just like the Hawaiian, which is just a really beautiful big version of Epiprenum, like aureum. And then with Epiprenum pinnatum, so that's the cebu, you get like also the dragon tail, you get the Epiprenum albo, and then there's the Epiprenum, I think Eplesium. It's like the really long leaf pothos. I have one, and it looks very kind of like a palm or something. It doesn't look like what you would think a pothos would look like. So it looks like this. It's very odd looking. It's a weirdo. Definitely looks very different than, let's say, what my cebu looks like. So this is the cebu. This is a Epiprenum pinnatum, and the Epiprenum, I think it's Eplesium, something like that. It's also getting new leaves in here. But yeah, it has these really kind of weird looking leaves. It kind of looks like a palm or a dracaena. Doesn't look like your kind of regular pothos that people think about. But yeah, there's so many. There's so many, Holly. So many. Gabby, I have an aloe that is sometimes very firm and sometimes gets very soft. Is it something of the watering or the sunlight? I would say watering. I don't water it much at all. So yeah, with aloes, they do tend to get overwatered. I have a few aloes, and them, like the big aloe, I think I watered that guy. I don't think I water him more than once a month. My little ones, I have some little aloes, and I water them about every 3 weeks. So I barely water my aloes. So yeah, I barely water them. So when they're soft, it could be that they've taken up a little bit too much water, and then they kind of firm. If they're thirsty, they would get more wrinkled. It kind of looks more like a wrinkle versus like a overall floppiness. But it could be watering. Yeah, I don't think it has anything to do with the sunlight. That definitely sounds like it's a turgidity issue, which is like that firmness that comes with water. Yes, thank you, George. Thank you so much. I really appreciate when you're in here. I really appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you for like the backup. You're awesome. I really appreciate that. But oh my gosh, yes, we went over a little bit. So I thank you. I thank you for everyone that stayed on the extra 20 minutes. I think I got all the questions. Oh yes. Oh, you're very welcome, Gabby. Yeah, hold off just to kind of see how it's doing. George, if I have an aloe indoor and if it's under a grow light. Yeah, I actually have so my big aloe, it's like that big, is in my western window. It's not right in front of the window, it's right off to the side. So like here's my window, and then I have a pot like right here. So it does tilt towards the window because it's a little taller. So it kind of tilts towards the window. but it's not right in the window, because when I had it right in the window, it started to turn orange, which means it's blushing. So that means there's too much sun. So the plant starts to kind of create its own sunblock out of anthocyanins. And so it kind of turns this like sometimes oranges or reds, like the whole plant turns like that, and it's a stress response. It's like I'm burning. So I removed it and I put it there, and it turned a beautiful shade of green again, and it's been happy. So that happened like about 3 years ago to it, when I still had it and it was still pretty small. And so it's been happy ever since. So I left it where it is. And then my other aloes, I have some different species of aloe, some in my southeast window, and some also in the western window, but they're tiny, that they're thicker. And those I have right up against the window, and they're fine. So they haven't blushed or anything for me. So I think it was just my aloe vera was like, I'm not having this western light. But the little ones, like the salmon alvo, they're like the more decorative albos. They're not medicinal. They're happy right up against that sunlight, no problem. But yeah, like I have this one. Hold on, I'll just show you real quick. Here we go. This is my star aloe. So it's a little thicker, and I think it's because it's thicker. It comes from an environment where there's more light in general, right? So these varieties are kind of meant to deal with more light. So this is right up against my, this is a star aloe. It's very spiky. And this one's right up against the western window. Perfectly fine. No problem at all. It does get like this little pink on the tips of these little kind of thorns, as you can see. So the light definitely keeps that pink on those edges, like a magenta, really. It keeps that color on them, but the rest of the leaf stays that really nice green. It doesn't look real. It looks like plastic or something, but it is a cool plant. It's a star aloe. So check it out, because yeah. Gabby is mentioning the frosted windows. Yes. So in our bedroom, one of the windows, we do have the window near our bed for privacy. Brian always feels like someone can see us even when the curtains are drawn. So we have a privacy screen on that window that does like filter like the light. So it's one, we still get sunlight. It's not as strong, but it's also nobody can kind of see in. Yeah, that can be very helpful for plants if you have very strong light and you want to kind of dampen that light. You still want to get the light from the window, but you want to dampen it so it's not as strong. Putting those kind of protective films are really, really great. So definitely good recommendation. Totally forgot it. I have it and I totally forgot that I have it. So yeah, do they ever flower indoors? In terms of the aloes, my aloes have never flowered. I'm not sure if maybe even my biggest aloe, I think it's still just not big enough. But no, I haven't had one of my aloes flower. But yeah, I think I got the questions. All right. But thank you so much for tuning in. I truly appreciate it. Yeah, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your week. I can't believe it's March. It's March. It's the month the year's already going really fast. We're already in March. But thank you so much. I truly appreciate it. I hope this was informative. Definitely check out that sound exhibit. So the Underground Sound Project, look it up, listen to the sounds. I'd love to hear what you guys think. So like, let me know. I'll post it also in the Facebook group for people if they want to check that out, because it's such a cool experience. It really is. And it was funny because Brian, it was just for the teacher, so Brian couldn't come. So I sent him the link and I would tell him, we're at spot D right now, we're at spot E. And so he could listen along while at home. He was like, this is so cool. And I was like, yeah. So we're gonna go back and do it together. but actually, being able to hear it, it's so cool. And I like that it's, you can still access the recordings remotely. But she actually gave a really good idea where this kind of audio tour can be applicable to your local green space. So if maybe that you have some cherry trees in your local park, or you have some pines or something like that, what you could do is, remember where those kind of recordings are, and then go to the park and listen to it there. Or if you have a stream, near in one of your parks, and then listening to the recordings taken from within the stream underwater, things like that. It's really immersive. It's really, really cool. So check that out. It was just a really awesome experience. I needed to tell you all about it. So, but thank you so much. And yeah, please be safe. And I hope I'll see you next week, everyone. Have a good one. Bye for now.